really looked at a tiny seed and just wondered, how? How does that little speck hold the secret to something that can grow for hundreds of years and tower over everything around it? Well, today, we're cracking open that very secret.
I mean, seriously, think about it. This is more than just getting bigger. It's an incredible feat of biological engineering. How does that seed know how to build roots that go down, stems that go up, leaves, flowers, all in the right order? It's a puzzle, and we're going to piece it together.
Okay, first things first, let's get on the same page with the word growth. We're not talking about something like a sponge soaking up water. That's temporary. In biology, growth is permanent. It's irreversible. Once a stem gets longer, it doesn't just shrink back down. That's the ground rule for everything we're about to explore.
So, if this growth is permanent, where does it all come from? Well, unlike you and me, plants have a kind of secret weapon for lifelong construction. You can think of it as a perpetual growth engine built right into their bodies.
And this is a really big deal. See, animals like us have what's called determinate growth. We grow to a certain size and that's it, we're done. But a ton of plants, they have indeterminate growth. That means they can just keep growing for their entire lives. We're talking about ancient trees that were around for thousands of years, and they never truly stopped getting bigger.
The magic behind this endless growth, it comes down to these amazing tissues called meristems. A great way to think of them is as the plant's own fountains of youth. They're these special zones packed with cells that never, ever lose their ability to divide and crank out new cells, constantly fueling the plant's expansion.
And these little cell factories are placed in really smart locations. You've got the apical meristems, right at the very tips, the apex of the shoots and roots. Their job is to push everything outward, making the plant taller and the roots longer, always reaching for more sunlight or water. And then you have the lateral meristems, which are on the sides. They kick in to increase the plant's girth, making it wider and stronger. It's a brilliant two-step strategy. First grow up, then grow out.
Now, this growth isn't just some chaotic explosion of cells. No way. It follows these really strict, almost mathematical patterns. There are predictable rhythms that we can actually measure and describe. Let's look at how the beat goes on.
So plants basically use two main rhythms. The first one is called arithmetic growth. Picture a cell dividing into two. One of those new cells goes on to divide again, but the other one stops and matures, gets a job. This creates a really steady, constant, linear increase. Think of a root tip pushing through the soil at a steady pace. But then there's geometric growth. This is where things get exciting. Here, both of the new cells keep dividing, and their daughter cells keep dividing. This leads to an exponential, explosive increase in the number of cells. This is what you're seeing when a young plant seems to double in size overnight.
And when you plot this whole process out over time for, say, a leaf or even the whole plant, you get this classic S-shaped curve. It always follows the same story. It starts slow, in the lag phase, while the little seedling is just getting its bearings. Then, boom, it hits the log phase. That's the explosive geometric growth we were just talking about. But eventually things have to slow down. As resources get a little tighter or the plant matures, it enters the stationary phase and growth levels off. This S-curve is pretty much a universal signature of life. Okay, so the plant has a nonstop supply of new cells, and it has these rhythms that control how fast they're made. But how does a brand new generic cell decide what it wants to be when it grows up? How does it become part of a leaf instead of part of a root?
That, my friends, is a process called differentiation. It's basically career day for plant cells. A fresh cell from the meristem matures and physically changes to do a very specific job. For example, a cell that's going to carry water will build a tough, hollow, tube-like wall and get rid of most of its insides to become a super efficient pipe. But here is where plant cells are just incredible. A cell can differentiate and get a job, but if the plant gets injured, that same mature cell can do something amazing. It can de-differentiate. It quits its job, loses its specialty, and goes right back to being a dividing meristem cell. And then, get this, it can even re-differentiate into a totally new kind of cell to help repair the damage. It's like a worker being able to go back to school and start a completely new career on demand. Just amazing adaptability. All that cellular flexibility leads to this bigger, beautiful concept called plasticity. You could call it the plant's genius. It's the ability to literally change its own body plan to better handle whatever the environment throws at it. It's not just about growing bigger, it's about growing smarter. And you can see this in action everywhere. The classic example is the buttercup. If it grows on land, it makes these broad, flat leaves that are perfect for soaking up sunlight.
But if that exact same plant grows in water, it produces these thin, almost ribbon-like leaves that can move with the current and not get ripped apart. Same genetics, same plant, but it physically rebuilds itself based on where it lives. That right there is plasticity.
So, what is conducting this entire symphony? What's telling the cells when to divide, how to grow, and what jobs to take? Well, the final piece of the secret lies in a group of powerful chemical messengers.
They're called plant growth regulators, or PGRs. You can think of them as the plant's internal chemical internet. They are these tiny molecules that zip around inside the plant, carrying signals that tell cells literally everything: when to divide, when to get bigger, when to ripen fruit, and even when it's time to die. And scientists have identified 5 major groups of these chemical conductors. You've got auxins, gibberellins, cytokinins, ethylene, and abscisic acid. Now, each one has its own special role, but the real magic is how they work together, sometimes cooperating, sometimes competing, to perfectly fine-tune everything the plant does.
And this is where it all connects back to our daily lives. These regulators basically fall into 2 camps: promoters, which cheer on growth, and inhibitors, which tell it to slow down or stop. For example, auxins are promoters. They cause the plant to focus its growth at the very top. Ever wonder why trimming a hedge makes it grow out fuller on the sides? You've just cut off the main source of auxin. Then on the inhibitor side, you have ethylene. It's a gas that triggers fruit ripening. And yes, that's why the old saying, "one rotten apple spoils the whole bunch," is literally true. So these aren't just abstract chemicals. They're the master controls behind things we see every single day.
So when you boil it all down, the entire complex, incredible journey from a tiny seed to a giant tree, what we call development, is really the sum of these 2 core ideas: growth, which is making more stuff, and differentiation, which is giving that stuff a purpose.
So the next time you look at a plant, don't just see a static green thing. You're looking at a dynamic system that is constantly sensing its world and rebuilding itself to thrive. It's a strategy built not on a rigid plan, but on being flexible, patient, and responsive. And that kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What could we learn from that strategy in our own lives? Thanks for tuning in.